Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here again with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about episode 7 of season 2 of Game of Thrones called A Man Without Honor. And right there in the title of this episode, we have our big theme for this time around. I'm speaking, of course, of honor. Here we see what honor means to several characters. We see the conflicts that honor brings out to them, and we see what they are willing to do in the name of honor. So let's talk about that a little bit more before we delve into everything else. The main conflict for Jon in terms of honor, his vows that he has taken as a man of the Night Watch, are conflicting with his basic desires as a man. And Ygritte, his boy, is she ever exploiting that for all it's worth? We have, of course, Jaime, who quite clearly spells out a very legitimate point to Catelyn. What do you do if you have taken vows of honor and these vows conflict with each other? What do you do if the king that you have vowed to obey orders you to kill the innocents that you have vowed to protect? What is the honorable choice there? We also, of course, have Sir Jorah, who has, as the lady in the mask said, already betrayed Dany once. We'll try and get some time to talk about that later. And what his thing is, if you have already sinned against your honor, is it still intact? Does your honor still have value? And can you reclaim your honor? We also have, of course, Theon, and while his is a little bit more subtle, his question is, what will you do to gain honor, to gain renown? And last but not least, we have, I'm not even going to bother to try and pronounce his name, I'm going to continue to call him X-Man. Over in Qarth, we see quite clearly what happens when men have no honor. So anyway, before we continue on, I need to give the usual disclaimer. I have read all the books, but it's been more than a year since I've read A Clash of Kings, so if I forget some details, or if I get show and book continuity mixed up, please forgive me. Also, if you do not want to be spoiled for any little detail in the book, you might want to turn away now. I promise you I will not spoil anything huge, but in order to do this review properly, I feel I do need to talk about some minor things from the book. So again, that's your fair warning there. All right, so let's dive right into it, and I guess we might as well start talking about Theon. Here we see what he is willing to do. He's willing to, frankly, give a guy who certainly deserved it a beating. But while he does want honor, he defines honor as renown. He wants that respect from his father, and as we have seen at the very end, he is willing to murder children in order to get it. You know, I've earlier talked about how Theon is starting down his road to the dark side, and boy oh boy, here's his Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith moment right there. But yeah, let's not dwell on Revenge of the Sith. Anyway, as long as we're let's keep going down that road, and let's hop back over to Jaime for a while. One of the interesting things that people do bring up when talking about the show and the books is how the Lannisters, for all their flaws, do genuinely seem to love their children. It's certainly true with Tywin for the most part. Tyrion, except being something of the exception, of course. It certainly is true with Cersei, and while it's not exactly true with Jaime, he does obviously care for his children, but I don't think it's accurate to say that he loves them. If we're talking about Jaime, I think the only people that Jaime really loves are Tyrion and Cersei. And Jaime demonstrates this quite clearly. When he flat out murders one of his own kinsmen. And this is someone who he even spends all this time talking with and getting to know, and finally reminiscing with. He didn't have to do that. He could have easily just said to the guy, "Hey, come over here for a second," and then killed him then. But Jaime goes through all the trouble to do that. And honestly, I can't really think of why. I suppose it may just be to make us care more about Alton. He's a character original to the show. He was created to make a long story short to explain why a Frey was fighting for a Lannister. And I do have to give them a lot of credit. In that little bit of time, we do get to see quite a lot of Alton's character. We get to like him, and when we see what Jaime does, we feel bad for him. This does serve as a needed reminder that just because someone bears the name Lannister and is not Tyrion, it does not mean that they are an evil and bad person. So, Ser Jorah, let's talk about him briefly. I'm sure a lot of folks who are not familiar with the books are arching their eyebrows at the idea that Ser Jorah has already in some fashion betrayed Dany. Well, folks, I'll spoil one little thing for you. That lady in the mask is not BSing. Now, what has he done? That I will not tell you. That is an important detail. And when I found out what it was when I was reading the books, it was quite the shot in the gut. But I do love that Ser Jorah, for all his mistakes, is still, honestly, one of the more honorable people around. He is dedicated to serving Dany. Now, it may not be for 100% reasons of honor. I mean, it's perfectly clear to everyone at this point that he is in love with her. But yet, Ser Jorah is still a man who will, no, for better or for worse, stand by the queen to whom he has pledged himself. And for that, I do have to give him no small amount of respect. Jon, boy, you know what to say about Jon. He has taken a very hard vow. He has taken and I do think we need to be reminded. The men of the Night's Watch do not forsake sex. They forsake having children. Now, of course, sex is a precursor to that, but as the books make quite clear, they certainly have no problem going on down to Molestown in their off time and banging the prostitutes there. That's quite a popular pastime among the guys in the Night Watch, as they explain in the books. And I do believe it did get a mention last season in the show, but Jon is, quite frankly, terrified of sex, not because of the act of sex itself. It's just, as he has stated, the fear of bringing another bastard into the world. That fear of basically cursing another child with the not exact, you can't really say the life he's had, because Jon's actually had, for the most part, a fairly decent life. Certainly he grew up better off than many people in Westeros did. But it is that lack of a place where he feels that he belongs. That feeling that in some way, through no fault of his own, that he is unworthy. That is the thing that has haunted Jon Snow his entire life. That desire for a place to belong. That even with his home in Winterfell, even with Ned and Arya and his brothers, who were generally, as we've seen, fairly decent to him, he did not belong. He was not at home. He was the bastard. And that's of course one of the main reasons why he goes to the Night Watch. It is not a fun place. It's not summer camp, but it is a place where he thinks he may finally be able to belong. You know, I don't know if I've mentioned this before in my other reviews, but somebody once, and I think quite accurately, pointed out that Jon Snow is your classic fantasy hero trapped in a non-classic fantasy story. And I think that is an accurate assessment. And as I said, it is this basic desire that is tormenting him, which Ygritte uses fully to turn the tables on him. And I can't tell you how much I smiled when I finally got to hear, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." The stuff going on in Qarth. Honestly, I wasn't really looking forward to seeing that all that much. I just didn't want to have to put up with Dany yelling about how she wanted her dragons. But the stuff with Ser Jorah and the absolutely brutal actions that got rid of the rest of the ruling folks in Qarth, that certainly did make it all worth it. But now Dany has a very scary road ahead of her, and that was some freaky stuff in the book. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. But actually, to hop back on when I was talking about Jon Snow, the way Jaime just absolutely nailed Catelyn's character. Now, it's pretty obvious that Jaime's a good judge of character, and he just absolutely point blank nails Catelyn on her treatment of Jon Snow. And it is very much hitting her on the soft spot where he points out, like, look, I've only ever had sex with one person in my entire life, and that's more than your super honorable husband could ever say. And it is, in its own horrible and dark way, beautiful to see someone played just like that. I think this is, in a way, shows us why Tyrion and Jaime get along so well. Now, while Tyrion is the more cunning of the two, it's Jaime, as we have seen, is no fool. He's got that little Machiavellian streak in him. Not as great as Tyrion's, but it's there, and it's something to be watched out for. Okay, so let's see, what else? Let's talk about the Lannisters a little bit more. Seeing Cersei talking to Sansa, I really do enjoy this dynamic between them. It's Cersei as the evil mentor. It is Cersei who is blatantly sculpting Sansa to be another Cersei. She knows it, and Sansa knows it. And, well, frankly, it's not just Joffrey that Sansa has to be worried about. And she knows that too. But it was interesting how she does seem to be genuinely want Sansa to have the tools she will need to survive Joffrey, because she's going to need them. As bad as Robert may have been at times, Joffrey is infinitely worse. He is, as is pointed out, the wild dog, the mad dog with a crown. And the way Sansa asked her, shouldn't I love Joffrey? Shouldn't I love someone in this world more than beyond my children? And the only thing that Cersei can say is, in regards to loving Joffrey, you can try. And you can't help but feel that on some level, even Cersei has started to give up on Joffrey. And just that thought is obviously killing her. And we get to see this in that scene with Tyrion, where they both recognize that Joffrey's a lost cause, that Cersei has created a monster. And just seeing the fact that Cersei makes no pretense about trying to lie to Tyrion, which frankly would be pointless at this stage in time. And Tyrion, without words, without even so much as laying a hand on her shoulder, just by his presence, finds it within himself to offer Cersei, this woman, his sister, who has tormented him in his entire life, he still finds it within himself to offer her some small degree of comfort just by his presence. Okay, almost out of time. As always, the interplay between Arya and Tywin is just absolutely fantastic. Replacing Roose Bolton with Tywin was a masterstroke on the part of the writers. So much great stuff there. Well, anyway, folks, I am almost out of time. This is maybe not the strongest episode of the season, but it sure was a solid one. I really enjoyed it. Until then, take care. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.